welcome to my YouTube channel. As always, thank you for subscribing. If you haven't, do so. Today is going to be focused on safe boating for the typical, simple boater. Not maritime, not mariner, not a cadet, but you guys may find this useful, so everybody should watch it. And as always, this is a dose of sailor's wisdom. Obviously, every video has to have a disclaimer. The images and material contained within belong to their respective owners and are used for teaching purposes only, of course, because that's what the channel is. Please consult your local marine regulations authority, as my information I give you within this PowerPoint and video may differ from your local area. Excuse me, and that is just to clarify. And I have no problem if you want to DM me on Discord, which is in the About Us section and on the banner. I have no problem if you reach out to me, but I do need your country in order to help to make sure that you have the right stuff to your local area. But if I'm unavailable, never hesitate to reach out to your local boating club or other marine authority. What we're going to cover today, basics of boating in terms of safety. Now, I will say we're going to be missing certain things because I wanted to create each video for those specific things. For example, firefighter, you have your man overboard, and of course, more on the navigation side, more on the rules of the road side, because of course, there's 38 rules in the Coal Regs. And we're only covering 5, 6, 7, 8, and 18 and 19, if that gives you kind of a scope. All right, that being said, we're also going to cover autopilot. Let's begin. Now, this is self-explanatory. I shouldn't have to read all this, but I will give you the basics to ring it into your head. Please have a life vest, a PFD, whatever you want to call them. You don't have to wear the bulky ones. They have ones that are not bulky. And it's better than having nothing. Because I hate to tell it to you, I hate to break it to you, but PFDs are not going to help you unless you're wearing them. Alright, let's move on. Obviously, I don't want you drinking and driving, and I don't want you texting. I don't care if it's a hot chick on Facebook that's messaging you. I don't give a crap. It's not worth it. And you might also have people on board with you, so think of them if you don't care about yourself. As always, have proper emergency supplies on board. Inspect monthly. And G, you would never want to have a situation where you got your kiddos on board the boat, and you're ready to leave the dock, and everything's beautiful, great day, nice weather, and your engine basically kaputs because you didn't check to make sure it was working properly. And of course, your PFDs you find are moldy or torn or water had seeped somewhere. And this is always a bad thing, but it'd be better if you could discover that in the winter. Or you discover it a month beforehand so you can take care of those things and have them in working optimum condition when you leave. Right? And of course, no battering this enough, but make sure stuff works before you leave the dock. Let's go with PFDs, personal flotation devices. As always, type 1, type 2, 3, 4, and 5 will be discussed. Type 1 is your offshore life jacket. Now, what that is it's great for either calm or choppy seas. So you might see this on cruise ships, passenger vessels, where they're going ocean going. They're maybe not near the shore. They're farther out, a couple hundred miles, and these things will still keep you safe. The greatest thing is obviously most buoyancy out of all the 5. And the biggest thing, of course, they will most likely turn an unconscious person face up. And pay attention to those pieces in each of these PFDs that I discuss. Type 2 are more for your near shore, so you kind of still have that shore in sight, maybe just off a little bit. But unfortunately, they do not turn you face up if you become unconscious, and they're not great for recovering a man overboard that is in choppy water, or, of course, um, you know, weather, storms, that sort of thing. They are seen more commonly. This is one of the ones that's seen more commonly. There's another one, which we'll get to. Type 3, flotation aids. Now, these are mainly seen on those are like kayakers, jet ski, uh, kiteboarders, all the, I don't know all of them, but all the water toys. They're specific, pay attention to the label, but they're specific for whatever you're using them for. Canoeing, kayaking, those sort of things. All right, so the next one is throwables. Now, throwables, this is an easy way to remember. Throw, don't go. These are designed to be tossed to somebody in trouble, and you're hoping that there are several boaters near. I've had it where I've fallen off the tugboat, and I got drowned with a bunch of throwable PFDs because everybody around me was uber trained. And even though the other person already tossed it overboard to me, they just thought they did that too. And then somebody else came by and did it. So I had like 6 or 7 PFD throw pillow things all thrown at me, even though I had a PFD on. Just to make sure there was enough buoyancy there. All right, so they're like the little pillow things you see. They're also like the life rings, which you're gonna see in the images in the next slide. But they're also like the life ring, the little donut thing that you throw with the rope. There's also one that's like a square, and then there's one that kind of looks like a toilet seat. Don't ask me the shapes, but they're practical. That's the whole point. Last but not least, we have my favorite, and these are because I prefer the automatic inflatables. Like I don't want the thing bulky. I'm like you, I hate bulky PFDs because I can't do my job on the tug when I look like I'm a snowman suit. And no. So I have a automatic or manual inflatable. This thing does both, and it is less buoyant than a Type 2 and 3. So keep that in mind. Also, I did not put whether or not they would turn someone face up. I don't think they would. And then I almost forgot, really key point. With the Type 3, um, those really important to note this. You should just always use them when you have boaters nearby, quick rescue. The reason is because not only will they not turn you face up if you become unconscious, they may turn you face down, which is worse than if they didn't turn you face up. So you're having to lean your head back and fight with being flopped forward face down. So that's really important. But back to the last type of PFD. There's also another one in here, like work vests, that sort of thing, which kind of pulls off of the Type 5. And what they basically are is they might be articulated with a harness for like jack lines or something, and they may also have it attached to them. But the biggest thing with the inflatables that is a concern for me is that it's good to have manual and automatic inflatable. The problem is people don't realize if they pick manual, they may not be able to pull that cord, that trigger. And it's nice that the little tablet or a sensor that's inside the PFD opening that immediately senses and picks up on water, it'll inflate. So that's key. That's why I have both in case something happens. But it's always good. Those are the ones you kind of want to inspect maybe monthly, no matter if you're sailing or not. And here you kind of have a beautiful picture. Now the Type 5 that you see here to your lower right, that has what I kind of have, which is the suspender PFD, and that's basically what I use. It has a little spot for a harness and all that. Your Type 1 and 2, like I said, you're going to see them on common passenger vessels. They're the ones, the Type 2 is usually the one that the captain or the first in command is showing you demonstrations on. If you're a passenger of like a ferry boat and you're like, why do we have to sit through this? That's why. Because they explain you how to put it on and all that. So, and this is a good example for the throwable PFD. Type 4 right there. It's just a little square pillow with some straps. So my big pet peeve is to the far right of this slide, you'll see what looks like a pouch. It has like a waist strap. I don't recommend those because all of these PFDs you see, other than the throwable, they're already over your neck. They're already attached to you. They're on you. They're secure. Okay. With the hip pack, I don't care if it's automatic inflatable or manual. It doesn't. I don't give a damn. The problem here is it's the location. I don't think the PFD is not going to work. It's the location. You're even if it automatically deploys, you're underwater and it's going to deploy. It's going to float. I don't doubt it's going to float, but you're not. You're going to be in the water, drowning. Well, it's floating. Made sense, right? No. So, very important. Those fanny pack PFDs are a death trap. I do not recommend them. I want to be very clear. I do not recommend those. Suspenders is fine because they're already on your body, they're strapped in, and you also can do a harness. But the fanny pack, no. And the reason also is when it deploys, you have to be conscious and aware, and it has to just be this perfect Minecraft water where you just jump in and you're like, oh, PFD over my neck, going into the water. Ah. And we all know when you abandon a boat, it's not gentle like that. Your boat's being tossed around, you're being tossed around, things are flying, you got rain blowing in your face, more, waves blowing in your face. There's no way that you're going to be able to. No. The typical scenario is not going to be something from Gilligan's Island. All right, let's continue. Colregs. My favorite subject. No, just kidding. All right, so Colregs. International Regulations for Preventing Collisions at Sea, also known as IRPC. First created in 1972. Of course, I was born in 87, but still, pretty old. So basically in English, like I said before, these are for your kind of like your driving rules of the road, but instead for use on the boats. So basically, there's, like I said in the beginning, 38 rules. And we're going to touch on a few because there's just not enough slides for this. All right, Rule 5. Some of these slides I'm going to include in here are a big pet peeve, so pay attention if you can. Rule 5 is lookout. It's simple, right? Look out. Have a lookout posted. It's not that hard. Now, the language that Coleregs says in here says every vessel shall at all times maintain a proper lookout by sight and hearing, as well as by all available means appropriate to the prevailing circumstances and conditions as to make a full appraisal of the situation and the risk of collision. Mind you, you're going to hear a lot of appropriate and prevailing in the prevailing circumstances. Just get used to that. What that basically means in English, what do you have at your disposal? What do you have on your person? What do you have on board? Electronics, equipment, everything. Use those things, for example, binoculars, to be a better lookout. Simple. Not that hard. But it's very important you set aside a person. Now, if you're the only one in the boat, you could do this and be your lookout. But if not, try to get your kids to do it. It's something to teach them. Or a friend. Because you all should be a part of keeping everybody safe. It isn't just the operator's job or the captain's job. It's a team effort. All right, let's continue. Rule 5, again. So this part kind of goes in depth in what I mean by, or what they mean by sight, hearing, and electronics and stuff like that that's available on board. Good example, and I know my cadets are going to go, really? Really? We already know this. Just bear with me. This is for recreational, so just bear with me. But scanning the horizon from left to right or back from the center of your bow, looking for any hazards to you, passengers, or the vessel and or other vessels in the area. If you see a floating picnic table, just because it didn't bother you, doesn't mean it's not going to bother Howard down the bend. This guy named Howard's on a boat and he's chilling, hauling butt, and you're like, hey, there's a picnic table. Oh, okay. Keep him safe too. Remember, team effort. So, keeping an eye out for divers or folks enjoying a swim. That's important. And it's also cool if you have a bunch of people on board because one guy could be driving and the other one could be looking for these things that maybe the person driving that's looking in a different direction for that second didn't see somebody pop out of a boat and fall in the water. Then that person that's doing a lookout can yell, "Man overboard." Something. All right. Basically, this is all self explanatory. I'm not going to go too in depth, but it's important. Rule 5 is really important, and I see a lot of people out of the waters not pay attention at all. It's as bad as autopilot use. It's not that hard to just pay attention. You don't have to go 4 years in a maritime academy to figure it out. Just pay attention. Look around. If you don't know something, learn. Look it up. All right. Hearing, obviously. Listening for sounds around you. Important thing is sounding signals. Because if you're new to boating, or if you're in an area where there's big ships, they're going to let you know if you're in danger. They're going to give you 5 short blasts telling you, hey, I'm not sure of your ability to, you know, not collide with me. I'm not sure of your ability to avoid collision, and you need to pay attention. So that's a good example of why you need to be open to hearing in your lookout duties. And of course, obviously, what you have on board, we already discussed that. All right, safe speed. Now, this is one of the big pet peeves I have. People, uh, they ask me, what is safe speed? Well, first, we'll go with the coal regs. Every vessel shall at all times proceed at a safe speed so that she can take proper and effective action to avoid collision and be stopped within a distance appropriate to the prevailing circumstances and conditions. And then, of course, that question, remember, how can I determine the safe speed for my vessel? Simple. Ask yourself a series of questions. What's the weather like? What's the wind like? What's the current doing? What are the waves doing? Lastly, how crowded is it? Are there big ships in the area? Are there small boats? Are there kayakers? Is there a sailing regatta down the way? I mean, pay attention, to what's going on around you. That kind of goes with the lookout, because then if you're doing good looking out duties, then you're going to know what speed you can do. Just because the jet ski next to you hauled butt doesn't mean that you, with, you know, 2 kids in the back, can just go "Wah," right behind them. No, you need to be aware of everything around you, and if those series of questions are good, then maybe you can go slightly fast. But I see so many people, especially coming into the harbor, really, really fast, and then they'll slow right down. It's like, no, your wake. It says no wake on the thing, and your wake just like made all these boats go woo woo. So I mean, come on. That's one of my big things. Um, is that it doesn't mean you can go as fast as you want if it's not posted like it is on the speedway. All right. Rule 7. Very important. Risk of collision. Every vessel shall use all available means appropriate to the prevailing circumstances and conditions to determine if the risk of collision exists. Remember, you're going to get those prevailing circumstances thingy again. There you go. Key point. If there is any doubt, such risk shall be deemed to exist. This means if you're not sure, assume that there's a risk of collision and that you need to take action. When you've noted a possible risk, just like I said, if you know, even if you're not sure, you assume it exists. And basically, you act accordingly. Now, even if you don't know all of the rules of the road out of the whole manual for the coal regs, that's okay. If you get these pieces, you'll be okay. But it's very, very important, this one, because other vessels that are bigger than you, they can't do some of the maneuverability that you can. So pay attention to these next core regs. All right. If there is still a risk of collision, even if the other vessel has changed their course, you're still having an issue, especially if it's a large boat. Because if you're still really close to it, even if it changed course, you're still in danger because the wake alone from some of these big ships is huge. Even the wake, if you're a kayaker and you have a 40-foot vessel near you, uh, the wake from that 40-foot vessel can affect you greatly. All right. So you still have a collision situation. So even though, and I say this, if you're a smaller vessel, I think even if the large vessel changes course, which obviously is a rarity, if they do out of courtesy, you should also change course, just to make sure it's very clear that there is no longer that risk. Rule 8. At this point, you're at the point where you need to make that decision and that action to change course, avoid collision. Now, these parameters are action to avoid it. So, Colreg's Rule 8 says any action to avoid collision shall be taken in accordance with subpart 4 and 19, 4219, which we'll get to in other videos, and shall, if the circumstances of the case admit, be positive, made in ample time, and with due regard to good seamanship. Now, there is a lot of tight language there, and this second paragraph kind of breaks it down, but I'll break it down even better. When you change your course, it can't be just 5 degrees to port, 5 degrees to starboard, or 10 degrees to port, 10 degrees to starboard. It can't be something simple. You have to make it so clear that the master or the captain up in the other vessel knows instantly that you are no longer on a collision course, that you have made a clear, obvious, straight to the, right to the point course change, you went the other direction. And I see a lot of this where a lot of these little boats that come near the tug when I'm in, which we'll get to in Rule 19 and 18, but they seem to not understand. I also can't see them, for one. But two, that when they change their course, they change it just such little, minute detail that I still feel like they're on a collision course with me. And they're still going to receive 5 short blasts of the whistle, letting them know, danger, danger, I'm unsure of your intentions, to avoid collision. So be very clear with that piece. Now, Rule 9. This is one of the top things that just makes my blood boil. So you have here in this diagram, simple, red right returning, and then you have your green going out to sea. All right. You see these 2 big ships in the back, okay? And it's 2 small rotors. That's a perfect example for this. So in Colregs, it says, while this rule is much more in-depth in the manual, the big thing I wanted to mention is the simple recreational boater is you cannot anchor in a narrow channel, nor should you impede the safe passage of large ships who are unable to change their course outside the invisible road, which you can't see, which you kind of can with the diagram. But the point is that you cannot impede the safe navigational, basically, I'm going one direction. You cannot impede me because I can't get out of the way. That makes sense? Um, and here you have vessels in a narrow channel should keep as near to the starboard side as safe and practical as possible. Yes, this is important because the tug I'm on is basically one of those big ships in the back. That is the size difference to your little, 4-person boat. Okay? Um, and I'm going to have issues seeing you if you are too close to me. I'm going to have issues seeing you if you are right off my bow or if you cross my bow. Never cross a large ship's bow unless absolutely like 911 necessary. Like there's a hurricane or something. So, all right. I'm not going to go more in depth with this. Of course, the other one is. Here we go. Again, Rule 9. Ships. Never, ever anchor or abruptly slow down unless it's an emergency, like I mentioned. And if you can't get as far as you can out of the main channel, we can't turn on a dime like y'all can with your small boat. And we lack the low speed maneuverability that smaller boats take for granted. and I can't deviate. So in this decal here, or diagram, you see clear as day the offending boater. And here's a container ship and a cruise ship. So even if that container ship's master wanted to avoid collision, he couldn't. He has two options. Or three options actually. Ram the cruise ship to avoid colliding with you. Two, ram land and become an aground vessel, basically running the vessel aground, losing millions of dollars in containers. Or three, running you over. And four, I don't think he would possibly in this situation be able to stop in time. A lot of people don't realize that these big ships take a lot longer to stop than your boat. It's not, there's a lot more inertia, but there's not like your sports boat, okay? Even though we have reverse propulsion, we can go astern, which is using the engine's forward motion to back itself up. It still takes time. And there's a lot of energy kinetically and potentially flowing. And it's just stupid if you're going to sit there and be in the channel and be an idiot. Please don't. Now, if this ever happens to you and you're on the boat and the engine dies or something, right? Just get off the boat. Just get off the boat. If you can, try to get the thing with oars out of the channel. But if it's too large, if it's like a 30-footer, 40-footer, whatever, just get off the boat. You know, and in this situation, even if that container ship wanted to collide to try to get, not wanted to collide with the cruise ship, of course, but wanted to get over there, it would still be putting, does he put 4,000 people in danger? And then, of course, however many are on the cargo vessel, he's gonna do that thought process in his head. What do I do? And so please don't do this. Here's another part for Rule 9. If you haven't got it between the first slide, I think this really will explain to you. It's simple. I'm going to let the image, even if you can't read, please, the image alone speaks for itself. This is a vessel called the MSC Geneva. It is clearly in waters that are low depth, so that's one thing to notice. Two, there's this other motor boat that's just kind of up from its bow. I guarantee you that unless there's cameras installed, that the master, captain, helmsman, the whole bridge crew can't see you. And the scary part is, this is what I mean by don't cut across a ship's bow, is because if you look, the wake alone from this ship is tall enough, the wake that it's generating is tall enough to that boat, the little boat. And it just really shows you in this image the size difference and why it is so important to pay attention, so important to use your brain, because they can't see you. If that little boat is you, you're screwed. All right, Rule 18, responsibility between vessels. A lot of people ask me, how do you know what vessel to give way? How do you know what vessel to avoid? What vessel to give more room? Listen up. So, order of priority. Now, what's not in here, I'll start from the bottom. Wing and ground, or WIG, or seaplanes. They would be below the power-driven vessel. So they would yield to the power-driven vessel. So as it goes up, each vessel yields to the other one. So a motorboat, a boat operating its engines, would yield to a sailboat, a boat using wind as propulsion, generating movement. Now, the sailboat, some people ask me if it has an engine, what do they display? And there's a thing called a steam cone, and it's upside down, and you display it on one of your masts as high up as you can. And what you do is it signals to other vessels that you are operating your engine, even though you have sails deployed. Whether or not your sails are deployed or not, if you're using your motor, steam cone. And what that does is it lets them know that you are now operating as a power-driven vessel, so you would have to yield to other sailboats. Even if you are a sailboat, it doesn't matter. You have to yield if you're operating your engines. Moving on. Sailboat, power-driven vessel, and seaplane has to yield to fishing vessels. And of course, in other videos, I will go in depth in what the lights are and what the day shapes are for noting which one is what. All right. Fishing vessel has to yield to vessels that are dealing with things like depth, draft, or they're constrained by it, or they're restricted in their ability to maneuver. They also have to yield to those not under command. The one that is dealing with, obviously, what I mentioned, that one would yield with restricted in their ability to maneuver. Because, of course, if they're restricted in their ability to maneuver, then they can't get out of your way. This isn't like about who's the more important vessel. This is about what is the percentage that they can avoid collision, that they can get out of the way. And a powerboat can really good. Sailboat not so much because they're on tack with the wind. Fishing vessel not so much because they're hauling in nets, so they're kind of stationary. See what I'm saying? You see where this is going? Okay. Continuing. Those restricted in their ability to maneuver are because they're having some sort of issue or they're having um, weight issues. So, cargo vessels, working vessels, or some other reason that they're having an inability to maneuver. All right. Last but not least, not under command. Now, you do see two day shapes for the restricted in their ability to maneuver. With the yellow vessel in the picture here, three black dots is easy to remember. Three black dots is restricted in the ability to maneuver. And at night, there would be three red balls, like three red lights, on top of each other, just like the day shape. Same thing with not under command. It would be two red balls or two red lights, and then two black balls in the daytime. So the easy way to remember the not under command, which is extremely important, as much as the restricted in the ability to maneuver. For not under command is red over red, my captain is dead. Doesn't actually mean the captain is dead, it just means it's not under command. Alright. So this also applies to some of the whole overtaking things, which I will go into other videos. It's not going to be in this one. But I just want to mention this kind of shows the whole giveaway, you get the idea. Alright. Rule 19, restricted visibility. If you hear the fog signal of a vessel you cannot see, slow to minimum speed until you are sure there is no risk of collision. That is really uber important because they may be dealing with fog and you might not be dealing with fog. You just see some clouds. You don't know they're there. They don't know you're there. You might be in a clearing, but they don't know. All right. So a big thing that you need to realize. Remember the lookout with hearing. One prolonged blast plus two short blasts at intervals of not more than 2 minutes is the signal used by a sailing vessel. Because remember, we can't tell in here when it's fog. We cannot tell what type of vessel you are in order to follow the rules and figure out who gives way to who or who avoids who. So we have to do it with sound, which is the sailing vessel is going to do the one prolonged blast plus two short blasts at intervals of not more than 2 minutes. And then sound signals are used, obviously, to warn other boaters and alert them to danger. But they're also used to alert other boaters to what type of boat you have. Are you a sailing vessel? Are you restricted in your ability to maneuver? Are you not under command? Or are you just a simple power-driven vessel? All right. One prolonged blast is a warning, for example, used when coming around a bend that's, you can't see or leaving a dock. So that's important to listen to that because if you're dealing with a congested port, or a marina that has a lot of boats that are leaving, which they shouldn't be because it's fog, but you get the idea. You're going to hear a bunch of that. So five or more short rapid blasts are used to signal danger, to signal that you don't understand or you disagree with the other boater's intentions. Now, I don't agree with the whole not understand because at least in the Great Lakes where I sail, it's usually meaning to pay attention and get out of the way. Especially done by giant lakers that are going through canals that are kind of, skinny and narrow. And if another boat for some reason doesn't get the message and they just kind of float in there, it doesn't matter who you are, you're going to get 5 short blasts to get the hell out of the way. All right, let's proceed. Autopilot. Now, this is another thing that I cannot stand, so just pay attention. It'll save your life. Autopilot is helpful in maintaining your course. Yes. Offers the boater a break from steering the vessel, and this can allow you to be more aware. While it's holding course, for example, obviously, you can take a look around. Be a better Rule 5 person. Be a better lookout. It's really good if you're the only one there, because then now the wheel is doing, the autopilot's doing the job with the wheel, and you're looking around for that picnic table that I just surreptitiously, magically teleported in front of your vessel. So pay attention, because I'm going to come find you, and I'm going to download this magical thing where I can just superimpose a picnic table floating right in front of your bow. Last but not least, what autopilot is not for. Okay? Autopilot is not a stand-in for the captain or operator. It's not something you just switch on and run down to the galley for dinner. Nor should you ever, 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 ever sleep while autopilot is enabled. Please. I had a sailboat hit us while I was on the tug, and the guy was sleeping in the cabin, snoring away when this vessel hit us at, I swear, at least 12 to 15 knots. And just this crunching sounds I'll never forget. He's alive, but he had autopilot. And it's like autopilot is not gonna avoid collision. Your brain needs to be available to avoid collision because you cannot trust a machine. Let's continue. All right. When it's in use, all the same rules and recommendations of seamanship still apply. The color regs still apply. Just because you have autopilot does not mean that you can break rules. Also, important, you can't blame autopilot for any error that results in property damage, injuries, or loss of life. If you have a crash situation, in this case, what happened? What I just mentioned, the story I just told you. That's pretty clear, but basically, he couldn't blame the autopilot. He went to sleep. It's not the autopilot. It's not the autopilot's fault. The autopilot did what it was supposed to do. It just decided it magnetized to my vessel that I was on. That's all. It did its job, but it caused it to crash. But he can't say that because it's not like that. It's a machine. It does not have a brain. And so you need to understand that you can't go back and go, I'm going to sue the autopilot maker for wasting my $20,000 boat. No, you can't. Because you're in command of the vessel. It's you that signed. Autopilot is not a humanoid object. It is an inanimate object. It cannot think. It just does what's pre-programmed. That's it. Again, you cannot blame it for, yeah. And another thing, autopilot, when not used responsibly, can kill you and those on board, which I mentioned. It's just true. It can kill you. There's also gyropilot. And yes, autopilot and gyropilot are sort of interchangeable. I disagree, because it seems like the gyropilot that I see on big merchant mariner ships is also even worse of a death trap. So those type of things. And the biggest thing that people forget is that you steer the wheel for a rudder command or a rudder change. You want to change course, and you forget that autopilot, in this case gyropilot, is enabled. That's when things go crazy. So just please, when you're using autopilot, it's a great piece of technology. I recommend it, but I don't recommend being an idiot. Last but not least, you survived my craziness, and congratulations. Hopefully you will be a safe boater and a more responsible boater.